The courtroom was filled with an uneasy silence as Ethan Miller stood at the defendant's table, staring down at his trembling hands. The fluorescent lights above seemed harsher than usual, casting sharp shadows across the faces of the jury box and gallery. At the front of the courtroom, Judge Boyd, a man known for his uncompromising demeanor, adjusted his glasses as he flipped through Ethan's case file. Ethan's stomach churned with dread. He knew he had made a mistake, but he hadn't expected it to come to this. It had all started one rainy Friday evening. Ethan had left work exhausted, his nerves frayed by a week of long hours at the auto shop. His friends had convinced him to stop by the local bar for a drink, insisting he needed to loosen up. One drink had turned into 3, then 4. By the time Ethan staggered out into the damp night air, he thought he was fine. Just a little buzzed, he told himself. He got behind the wheel of his old Ford, the engine growling as he pulled out of the parking lot. What happened next felt like a blur. The headlights of an oncoming car blinded him, and he swerved. Tires screeched. A horn blared. He narrowly missed a collision before jerking back into his lane. Moments later, red and blue lights exploded in his rearview mirror. His heart sank. He pulled over, hands shaking on the wheel. The officer approached, flashlight beaming into Ethan's face. "Step out of the car, sir." Ethan complied, his knees unsteady. The officer administered the field sobriety test, and Ethan failed miserably. The breathalyzer sealed his fate. He was over the legal limit. He was arrested, handcuffed on the side of the road as rain soaked through his shirt. That night in the holding cell, reality crashed down on him. He had been charged with driving while intoxicated, DWI. This wasn't his first scrape with the law, but it was by far the most serious. If convicted, the consequences could be life-altering. Now, weeks later, Ethan stood in front of Judge Boyd, waiting to hear his fate. The courtroom was tense, filled with murmurs from observers who had come to watch the trial. Emily, Ethan's fiancée, sat in the gallery, her face pale with worry. She had begged him to fight harder, to plead for leniency, but Ethan's lawyer had warned that Boyd was known for making examples out of drunk drivers. "Mr. Miller," Judge Boyd's voice boomed, silencing the room. "You stand before this court convicted of driving while intoxicated. This is not your first offense, though it is the most severe. You endangered not only your own life but the lives of countless others that night. By sheer luck, no one is dead because of you." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to beg, but his voice was lost. His attorney gave him a small nod, urging him to hold steady. "I have reviewed your history," Boyd continued, flipping a page in the file. "I have read the letters submitted on your behalf. I have considered your pleas for leniency. But this court must send a clear message. Actions have consequences." The judge's eyes hardened. "For your crime, I sentence you to 6 years in state prison and a fine of $2,000. The words slammed into Ethan like a physical blow. 6 years. $2,000. Gasps erupted in the courtroom. Emily clutched her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Ethan staggered, gripping the edge of the table as his knees threatened to give out. "Your Honor, please," he finally blurted out, his voice cracking with desperation. "It was one mistake. I swear I've learned my lesson. Please, don't take my life away for this." But Judge Boyd remained unmoved. The sentence stands. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck, echoing like a death knell. Ethan was led away in handcuffs, his pleas hanging in the air, unanswered. The days after sentencing blurred together. Ethan sat in his cell, staring at the gray walls that seemed to close in tighter each day. The weight of the judge's words crushed him. 6 years. It felt like a lifetime. Every morning, he awoke with a pit in his stomach, realizing anew where he was and why. Emily visited him once a week, her eyes filled with sorrow but also determination. "We'll appeal," she whispered through the thick glass during their first visitation. "I've spoken to another lawyer. Judge Boyd is tough, but maybe, just maybe, we can get the sentence reduced." Ethan shook his head, bitterness creeping into his tone. "Don't waste your time, Em. He wanted to make an example of me. He doesn't care that I didn't hurt anyone. He doesn't care that I'm sorry." But Emily refused to give up. "Then I'll care enough for both of us." Her words were a lifeline, even as Ethan sank deeper into despair. Nights were the worst. Alone in his cell, he replayed that night over and over in his head. The drinks, the laughter, the flashing lights. He hated himself for getting behind the wheel, for being so careless with his future, and with the lives of others. Months passed. The appeal went nowhere. The higher court upheld Judge Boyd's ruling. Ethan's hope dwindled, but Emily kept fighting. She gathered letters from neighbors, from his boss at the auto shop, from friends who vouched for his character. She attended community meetings, speaking about the dangers of harsh sentencing and the importance of rehabilitation. Inside prison, Ethan struggled to adapt. His cellmate, Carl, was a grizzled man who had seen it all. At first, Ethan avoided him, but Carl eventually broke the silence. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the whole world," he said one night. "I am," Ethan replied. Carl laughed. "Prison doesn't stop for your regrets. Either you learn to live with yourself or this place will eat you alive." Those words stuck with Ethan. Slowly, he realized he had a choice: drown in guilt or try to rise above it. He began attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the prison chapel. At first, he sat quietly in the back, listening as others shared their stories. One night, he finally spoke. "My name's Ethan," he said, his voice shaking. "I made one mistake, but it was enough to ruin everything. I keep thinking about what could have happened. I don't want to ever be that man again." The group leader nodded. Admitting that is the first step. Ethan found a strange comfort in those meetings. For the first time, he didn't feel entirely alone. He began working in the prison laundry, folding uniforms and scrubbing machines. The routine gave him purpose, a way to measure the endless days. 3 months into his sentence, Emily visited again. She looked exhausted but unyielding. "They denied the first appeal," she said, "but the lawyer thinks we can try again with new evidence. Letters of support, proof of your good behavior in prison. I've been collecting everything I can." Ethan pressed his hand to the glass. "Emily, even if it doesn't work, knowing you're out there fighting for me, it's the only thing keeping me sane." She swallowed hard, tears in her eyes. "Then hold on. For me." Time crawled forward. Ethan stayed out of trouble, earned good behavior credits, and even started tutoring another inmate who struggled with reading. Carl, watching him, said one day, "You're different now. When you came in, you looked broken. Now you look like a man who's starting to stand back up." Ethan didn't know if that was true, but the words gave him hope. Then, one evening, a guard called his name. "Miller, legal mail." Ethan opened the envelope with trembling hands. It was from Hayes, his lawyer. The appeal had been reviewed again, this time by a higher court. The 6-year sentence still stood, but there was a new development. The court had granted parole eligibility after 2 years, provided Ethan maintained good behavior and completed rehabilitation programs. Relief washed over him, mingled with fear. 2 years still felt daunting, but compared to 6, it was a lifeline. That night, Ethan wrote to Emily, "I don't know if I deserve this chance, but I promise I won't waste it. Thank you for never giving up on me." As he lay in his bunk, surrounded by the hum of prison life, Ethan thought about the man he had been, the man who thought one night of drinking wouldn't matter. That man was gone. Prison had taken his freedom, his dignity, nearly his future. But it had also forced him to face himself, to reckon with his choices, and to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. Judge Boyd's sentence had felt like the end of the world. Maybe, in some ways, it was. But in another sense, it was the beginning of something else. A painful, humbling transformation. And though Ethan still carried the shame of his mistake, he also carried Emily's voice in his heart. Steady, unyielding, hopeful. "Don't you dare give up."